What's up, y'all? It is Cameron from MTG One More Turn, and this is our third edition of MTG Eats. This time we're going to be doing some tacos, specifically pork carnita tacos. HelloFresh, as always, nice and yummy. So yeah, we're gonna do pork carnita tacos, and since we're doing pork, I figured we'd do another fun little random creature type of like boars. Technically, it's boars, hogs, and pigs, any of those creature types. But after doing a cursory search, I found that really boars took the top 10 of all three of them. So really, we're just going to talk about boars. As always, I do Scryfall to find it. My creature type, I do under $1, and I sort it by EDH rank. So I'm going to get started on my food, and we will talk about our first card. Anyway, number 10, our first one is Bristling Boar. It's 3 and a green for a 4/3 creature boar that has Bristling Boar can't be blocked can't be blocked by more than one creature. So he has like reverse menace, basically, so they can't like double block him. He can only be blocked by one creature. And what we're doing, we're going to take these diced, or I guess sliced because they're not diced, sliced onions. We're going to add a teaspoon of water to them, as well as some white wine vinegar. So Bristling Boar, nothing too crazy. That ability to only be blocked by one creature can come in handy if you're giving him like a lot of buffs, and generally trample is really what you want to go with that. So we're going to mix this guy, kind of have him soak, make sure everybody's getting touched there. And then we are just going to set it aside and let that guy soak and move on to our next thing, which is going to be cooking our meat. So I will get my ground pork, and I'm going to toss it in here. So yeah, it's not very impressive, unfortunately, for the young lad. I mean, it's a common. Its last printing was in Ikoria, so it's like nothing crazy, but it can definitely be pretty good in a deck that like cares about pumping up its creatures or things of that nature. Whether you're making them stronger for some reason, just like mono green Gruul Stompy decks like that. Always happy to take a good creature, but there's plenty of other better ones. Don't get me wrong. But if you're making a real budget deck and you're really trying to keep it under a certain price, like me and my friend Grant are known to make $25 decks. Cards like this really get the job done because they make it really hard. It's 1 and a green for a creature boar. It's a 1/1, but it says when it dies, create a 3/3 green boar creature token. So basically you sack it, it dies, it blocks in combat. Basically the idea is it's like a little baby boar. And then you kill it, and Mama Boar is like, "How dare you?" and comes and shows up to be like, "I can't believe you would do that." But it is handy in like either a like green-black aristocrats deck because it is going to make a token. So it's a nice, easy sacrifice choice. It's pretty cheap. You can have it block and then sacrifice it to something like Viscera Seer, which is a pretty cheap card as well, if I'm not mistaken. So again, we haven't really gotten to like some really interesting things. These are our low rung guys, but it does make tokens too. So if you care about tokens, that new Quandra commander just came out that cares about tokens. So this would be 2 mana for a 1/1 that when it dies makes 2 3/3s. If your commander is out, obviously. Now our stuff's starting to cook. Things like Doubling Season, Primal Vigor are going to make Brindle Shoat better. But it's not going to like, obviously those cards are way more than $1, so I don't know if we're really trying really hard to make this little 2 mana 1/1 good. And I think we'll just move on to our first rare on the list at number 8 is the Copperhoof Vorrac. It's 3 and 2 green for a creature beast, and it gets +1/+1 for each untapped permanent your opponents control. And it's a 2/2. So this plays really well against like blue decks, control-y decks, where they want to keep their mana up, and because of that, Copperhoof Vorrac does better. It gets bigger. or wall decks, which aren't known to tap very often. They're just going to sit there and hold back. Well, this guy is going to benefit really. Basically, it's a nice aggro guy for something like Zhur-Taa or something like that. That's going to benefit from your opponent's being defensive, from your opponent's wanting to like sit back and see what happens, not attack. If you have a play group where there's a lot of just kind of sitting around and not dirtling, but just like kind of like, oh wow, look what my deck can do when no one else tries to hit me or anything. This is a good card to play because they're going to either have to attack or they're just going to be hit it with a big creature each time. And if they're not creature heavy, they then have the choice of, do I play my spells now before it attacks or as it attacks, or do I wait till the opportune moment? So you're really forcing them to think differently about how they play their game with just a 5 mana 2/2. Think about that. Terrible stats, right? 5 mana for a 2/2, but it just changes how people are going to play the game, and it kind of warps the game around it, especially if you're giving it trample and things like that, where they just like don't know what to do, and they're like, well, I have to tap my mana because literally my lands being untapped is making his creature better. Maybe you can get like because especially if you're like doing really well and you're kind of like, what's that word? Where you're the arch enemy, you're really kicking butt. Now you attack with this guy, you can probably get a few of the players to tap all their lands during your combat just to make him smaller, which then you can do stuff kind of freely in your second main phase. Our pork is cooking nice and yummy, so that is good. This is like an unlucky Brindle Shoat or something. A Copperhoof Vorrac that did not quite get away. Too many tapped permanents, it would seem, for him to really be able to stop from getting turned into yummy. But I still think it's a great card. It's only $1, and it's really going to force your opponents to be either on the aggressive or not play at the most optimal time. I mean, you're playing red-green, and your game plan is simply, battle cruiser magic. You're just trying to hit hard. Then that's what you want. You want them to not be able to play when it's the best for them, but play when they have to play. So I think it's a good card. Moral of the story. So number 7, we have the Zortar Swine. It's a 3, a red, and a green for a 5/4. So 5 mana for a 5/4. Not the best stats, but it has a cool ability called Blood Rush. For 1, a red, and a green, you can discard the boar to give another creature +5/+4 until end of turn. So it's like a cantrip. A nice little combat trick. That's the word, not cantrip. The combat trick. And it works really well in decks that basically don't want anybody casting non-creature spells, like Zhur-Taa that punishes people for casting non-creature spells, or Nikki of the Old Ways, which says you can't cast non-creature spells, but you still want that, like, hey, who knows, like, I might be able to do something, you never know. And that's where Blood Rush is really effective, especially 3 mana for +5/+4. Giant Growth, you think, only gives you +3/+3? I would take an extra 2 mana for that extra 2 to your power, especially if you're trying to really hammer through damage, which is what Gruul is all about. It really does, and if all this fails, a 5 mana 5/4 is nothing to scoff at. It's obviously not what you want to do with the card. You want to use it to power up another one of your creatures, but it'll certainly get the job done, just like the pork here is done. So we are going to take this pork and put it on this plate. We are going to get back to it, don't you worry, but we do not need it right now. So we're going to transfer it to this plate over here. Looks yummy. I know you can't smell it because my camera, I haven't set up my smell-a camera yet, but smells delicious. I'll just let you know. Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to keep this yumminess. See that little extra oil that's left over in the grease, and we're going to use that to cook our vegetables. Vegetables! Talking is for losers. Talking correctly, at least. So we're going to add first we're going to add the poblano and the chopped onion. Get those guys in there. Yep. So we're going to let that cook while it's softened and talk about our next guy, who I actually think is really cool. It's another one of those cards that I think is underplayed. I mean, most of these guys are underplayed. I don't know how often you guys are seeing boars in your games, but I don't see them often. Anyway, so our next one is a Coalhauler Swine. It's 4, a red and a red, for a 4/4, so mess stats, but it has a really fun ability that says whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to each player. Isn't that fun? I think it's fun. So you can do things, and it makes, not only does it make your red spells seem really good, because you're playing this in a group slug deck, without a doubt. But this is fun with like Blasphemous Act, right? Deals 13 damage to each creature, and it costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. So you take Blasphemous Act, right? Even if it's 3 mana, it's 3 mana, 13 damage to each player. All you got to do is be like 1 or 2 life more than everyone else, and bam, they all die and you don't. Nice and easy. But yeah, so this Coalhauler dude is just hanging around, hauling coal, and beating everyone up. He also makes it so it's really hard to block effectively, right? Especially if someone swings in with their like commander for like some big old commander damage or whatever, and you're just like, nope, actually, everyone's gonna take that damage, including you. So decks that are gonna like this are gonna be decks that care about hitting everybody, you know. Mogus is a big one. Obosh, the Prey Piercer. Graven. Cards like that are just all about just mass damage, just hitting everything and hitting everything hard, and not really not hitting yourself, just hitting yourself less. Number 6, which means we're to our halfway point, so we are going to do our honorable mention because I think it is hilarious, and it is a Scandalmonger for 3 and a black. I know, out of our usual red-green colors. You get a creature boar Mongol for a 3/3. It has pay 2. Target player discards a card from his or her hand. Oh, awesome. How is this not a better card, right? It's super easy, right, to just empty someone's hand. Because by the time you play it, they've played a few cards. Even if you're doing it like every now and then, you have to do it as a sorcery speed. But you can just wipe people of their hands, especially if you play this late game when you have a bunch of excess mana and you're just like, and you don't get a card, you don't get a card, you don't get a card. No one gets cards. The problem is that it really is no one, because any player may activate this ability. So technically, if you're playing 0 politics, what's going to happen is you're going to make everyone mad because you're discarding all their cards, but they're just going to happily pay that mana to make you discard all yours, and since it's 3-on-1, they're going to have more mana than you are. They're going to discard your hand before you discard theirs. So what you got to do is make it political. Got to be like, all right, hey, I'm going to play this card. We know this guy's got a problem. Why don't we all put our mana into this guy to just wipe his hand so we can kind of reset the board, give us some time to where he's top decking, and maybe give us a chance in this game still. So I think that's why he's not in the top 10 is because it says any player may activate this ability. But I think that makes him better. You play the politics, right? Like, honestly, learning about this card, I want to pick it up. I have a politics deck with Shadrick's Silver Quill, the dragon that just came out. And I love to toss this guy in here and just kind of mess with everyone's minds a little bit and be like, oh, like, you should pay 2 to make sure this guy discards a card. Especially when we're in top deck and someone's just holding a mana, just holding a land in their hand, or holding a card in their hand. Maybe it is a land, maybe it's not. And you're just like, I can pay 2 mana to force them to use it right now if it's an instant. Or they just have to discard it. And I don't even have to have it. And I can just be like, yeah, man, you should do that. Like, look at my card. You can make him discard. You got him. Good job, buddy. It's all up here, friends. All right, so we will move on. That was our honorable mention. So now we're on to number 5, which are our Razor Swine. It's 2 and a red for a creature boar with first strike. It's a 2/1. Okay, so it's 3 mana for a 2/1 with first strike. Not the most impressive stats I've ever seen, but wait, there's more. He has the infamous, the feared, the loved or hated infect. And on that, we're going to talk about stuff that won't infect you except with a good full belly, some food. So we've done this. So now what we got to do is return our pork to the can. Now it's going to yell at me a lot, which is okay. It is free to yell all it wants. And now we are going to cook that for an extra 1 to 2 minutes. So yeah, this angry, I believe it's a Razor Swine, has infect. Which is really important because infect, I know everyone always thinks, oh, infect, you're going to deal infect damage, and that's going to kill me, and it's so scary, and I hate it. But that's actually not why I like this card. That's not that's not the part of infect that I think is good on this card. It's the fact that it has first strike, which means it's going to deal its infect damage before the creature that is blocking it or attacking it or whatever can deal its damage. And now infect does when it hits a creature is it puts -1/-1 counters on it. So let's say you're being attacked by a 2/2, or let's say he got a buff, right? He's a 3/2. We want to give him some health, right? And he's being attacked by a 4/4. Well, he's going to deal that infect before the 4/4 can hit him, which will make the 4/4 a 1/1. And while that won't kill the 4/4, it will stop the 4/4 from killing him. So it can shrink its opponent before its opponent can even get a chance to lay a hand on him. And yes, of course, you could, obviously, since I've been talking about Gruul, play it in a Gruul deck where you attack, and it's got first strike, and people are worried about the first strike hitting, so they go, I'm not going to block, and you pump it a bunch with, like, Blood Rush or other green goodies. Like, you could use the Zortar Swine that we talked about earlier to give it +5/+4. And so now it's 7. Now you only need a giant growth to give it that extra +3/+3, and bam, you've done 10 damage. The opponent is dead. But that's not the fun part. That's not like the cool part of it. There's so many other interesting things we could do. So yeah, I like that idea of basically making it a very, very hard to block, right? Because you can instantly shrink an opponent's creature before it has a chance to hit you. Which is why I think it still does work good with those combat tricks that Gruul is a big fan of. It just doesn't need to use those combat tricks to kill the opponent as opposed to like putting -1 counters. Scorpion God. Oh my gosh. Scorpion God infect. Because it cares about -1/-1 counters. So you just put all the black-red infect stuff in there. And then when you're attacking creatures, you're putting -1 counters on them. And then when they die, you have to draw a card thanks to the Scorpion God. That's so cool. Scorpion God. Also not budget, but also my favorite of the 3 evil gods, in my personal opinion. Okay. That has been cooked to 1 to 2 minutes. And so now we're going to combine our sour cream. Ooh, we're going to make a spicy sour cream. We're going to take this. We'll take the sour cream. Put it in there. Wish we had some more sour cream. So it's going to be a spicy sour cream to go along with our Carnitas Tacos. Now this is done cooking, so I'm actually not going to take it out, but I'm going to put it on low just so that it stays warm without cooking too much more. So in this, we're going to add this. We're going to add a smidgen of this, like so. Then we're going to add all of this. This is chipotle powder, so it makes things nice and spicy. And while we're talking about spice, we're going to talk about another. Honestly, the more I did this little thing, the more I realized so many of these boars are just criminally underrated. But we are into our top 4, so we're going to talk about our Nessian Boar. It's 3 and 2 green for a 10-6. Yeah, 10-6. 5 mana for a 10-6. This is like the opposite of the Copperhoof Vorrac, where you were like 5 mana for a 2-2. This is 5 mana for a 10-6. And it has a lure effect, which is super nice. That says all creatures able to block the Nessian Boar do so. But it says whenever it becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller draws a card. So basically, whenever it's blocked, obviously, so creatures draw cards. If it's blocked by 5 creatures, your opponent will draw 5 cards, which is a bit of a problem, but that's not the important part here. The important part is all creatures able to block Nessian Boar do so. Which means, basically, you've just made all your other creatures unblockable. So you're not playing Nessian Boar to win the game. That's just, sorry, you're not playing Nessian Boar to attack, to deal damage. That's not his job. His job is to clear the way for everyone else. But hey, if he has trample, right, as red and green are known to do, I've talked about, these guys are all really cool in those angry Gruul decks like Zhur-Taa, Nikki of the old ways, stuff like that, because they open up those avenues. So that is cooking, and that just makes it a good card, a solid card. So being able, especially when you're red and green, Gruul, Stompy, just all these big creatures, and suddenly they can only block 1, that's just KO for an opponent most of the time. And if he has trample, he's just adding insult to injury. It's just a solid card for helping you get your creatures through, which can be an issue. In Commander, I mean, things can definitely get clogged up and slowed down where you're just kind of staring at each other. No one has any really like profitable attacks. And then you top deck Nessian Boar. Hopefully you got haste, you slam the big boy down and just swing out at somebody. If you can give him indestructible so that you can then do that a few times to just kill everyone, that's good too. So we've made our stuff. So the number 3 spot is the Crowson Tusker. It's 5 and 2 green for a 6/5. All right, 7 mana for a 6/5 boar beast. Not the best, but it does have cycling, which is really the important part here, for 2 and a green. This guy is another one of those guys that you put in like Rada, you put in Zhur-Taa, Nikki of the old ways, stuff that doesn't want you to cast non-creature spells. So you got to find creatures that do non-creature spell things, like the Blood Rush effect on Zhur-Taa, as well as here the Crowson Tusker. Because whenever you cycle it, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So it's 3 mana, draw a card, and find a basic land. So obviously it'd be better if you put the land on the battlefield. So it's 3 mana, so it's cultivate price, but instead of getting a ramp, getting that land on the battlefield, instead you get card draw. And I think that's better. In a budget deck, it gets the job done, which is we're in a budget talk. That's just how this is going to be. And I think it works just as well. And if all else fails and you need a 7 mana 6/5, it's a body. That's what makes a lot of these cards good, right? These cards that do non-creature things, is that they have this extra, this modal thing, kind of like the commands from the Khans and the Dragons of Takir and the Khans of Takir sets. Those commands that said, hey, you can do one of this many things, Cryptic Command. Cards that can do a little bit of everything tend to be good, and that's why Crowson Tusker hits that top 3 spot. Not because either one of them is good or is amazing or better than the other ones, but because it can do whichever one you need the most at that moment. Draw it early, cycle it away. Draw it late, bam, you have a 6/5. And it just makes it a good card. The next one is, quite honestly, way different from the rest of our friends that we've been talking about, and that is Yasharn, the Implacable Earth. It's 2, a green and a white, for a 4/4. Nice, 4 mana for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic forest card and a basic plains card. Nice. Do they go to the battlefield? No, they go into your hand, but you're certainly not missing your next 2 land drops, which what that really says to me is it guarantees if you're just playing it off of lands, you will always be able to play it on those turns. You play it on turn 4, you get a forest, you get a plains. If they kill it between those turns, you're going to be able to play it on turn 6. You're going to be able to play it on turn 8. You're going to be able to play it on turn 10 because it gets you the mana you need to get there. And if you're playing a budget deck, you're going to have basics. It's not like you're going to run out. And if you have run out, it means hopefully they're all on the battlefield, and so you still have enough mana to cast. Now, what makes him interesting and separates him, besides the white mana, from his boar friends, is that he basically does the opposite of all his other friends. All these other boards are big, smash, like let's get through, gruel stompy. He's more of Selesnya stacks, because it says players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. So he just says, whoa, 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 slow down there. We're doing things the old-fashioned way. You're paying mana for it or you're not doing anything. End of story. Well, I guess technically you can tap things, but that's kind of like paying mana. So it says you can only pay regular mana to activate your abilities. So he kind of sets up this like really effective stacks commander, right? I mean, you're stopping them from doing that. You add a couple stacksy things. You still have a 4/4. You're always hitting your land drops because of your commander. You're putting in things like Winter Orb, Ghostly Prison, stuff to stop them from attacking you and make it harder for them to untap. How you win from there is up to you. I mean, you can always do all that stack stuff and then just bump up Yashan and just attack with him over and over again, or her. And our final guy, man, I'm really looking at this food and getting hungry. So let me prep this all. We're going to put them in these yummy tortillas and talk about our last guy, which is surprising and not surprising, right? So our number 1 boar is End-Raze Forerunners, which is surprising because I didn't realize he was under $1. So what he does is he's a 5 and 3 green, so an 8 mana 7/7 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. So honestly, that alone isn't too bad of stats, right? So End-Raze Forebringer, not only does it have Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, but it also, we're going to go with this guy, it also, when it enters the battlefield, each other creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains Trample till end of turn, which is pretty good. Yeah, this is a budget Crater Hoof, without a doubt. And it gets the job done just as well. I mean, if you have, 20 creatures out? Because I think that's the issue, right? End-Raze Forerunner just requires you to have more of a board state than Crater Hoof does. But when you're playing against 4 people, you're going to need at least, 10 creatures out? If not, no, I think 13 if they all have 40 life still to finish the game. With End-Raze Forerunners, you just need like 20, so like 7 more creatures. If you're making tokens, stuff like that, it's still going to get the job done. All right. So yeah, this is a nice, cheap finish to a game, and I think people don't use it enough. So we're going to add our tomatoes. Because I think people think Crater Hoof and they're like, man, anything else just isn't good enough. And that's just not the case. That's just not the case. I think that there is more times than not where End-Raze Forerunner wins the game just as easily as Crater Hoof does. Where the board state that you're casting End-Raze Forerunner and Crater Hoof into, especially in Commander, I feel like pretty often you're gonna be like, well, I really didn't need that much to finish the game. This gets the job done. So yeah, I think I'm gonna say bam. Here is my yummy food. We're gonna start with the wife for the sour cream because she really likes the sour cream. If there are any boars that you're like, man, this boar is under $1 and he should be on the top 10 too because he's super cool and not talked about enough, let me know. If you liked it, please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. But I think that's all I got. I'm gonna add some cheese here so you guys can see this delightful concoction. Pork carnitas. And there they are. Hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys liked the video. Have a super califragilistic expialidocious day, and I will see you on the next one.